of just like what I've always wanted was to be able to like contribute to media and like contribute to the way that we as women see ourselves, or the way we as people see ourselves, the way as Black women we see ourselves. Hello my loves, welcome to my channel. My name is Shanice and I'm 31 years old, and I created this channel kind of just to talk about a little bit about my life, why I'm here, and here is Paris, and how I got here. So I grew up in Canada, if you couldn't tell by my accent. Barrie, Ontario. It's a town just outside of Toronto, maybe like an hour outside of Toronto. It's not what you would call small, especially not anymore, but it was definitely like small-minded in the sense that I was definitely the only Black girl in my class for a long time, or like one of only 2 Black girls when I got to high school in our grade. And so it was kind of like this small town mentality. I was always like a pretty good student, and my whole teenage years I was thinking about either becoming a lawyer or a professor. And so lawyer because I wanted to be Ally McBeal, like I was gonna be the Black Ally McBeal. I loved her outfits, I loved how independent she was, I loved how she kind of like ran the show in the courtroom. And so that was gonna be me, like 100%. And then I got a little bit older and I realized that maybe I wanted my summers off. Maybe I wanted to be a bit more studious. And so I considered becoming a professor for a bit as well. And like, this is something that like I was always thinking about. Like I was super strategic as a child, and I was like, what is my end game? Like I need a plan. And so I basically was teetering when I was 15 between lawyer, professor, lawyer, professor, lawyer, professor. Until one day I had a teacher who said, okay class, you're gonna do a project and you're gonna make a magazine, and you can make it on whatever you want. I was like, okay, let's do it, I guess. And I ended up making my magazine about my sign. So I'm actually born on the 23rd of August, which, if you know anything about astrology, is actually on the cusp of Leo and Virgo. And so my whole teenage years, I was kind of going back and forth, like, am I Leo, am I Virgo, am I Leo, am I Virgo? Needless to say, I think I'm a Leo. That's like what resonates with me. And so anyways, I did this whole magazine about being on the cusp and the 2 signs and the duality of the 2 signs. I wrote articles about it. I did fake advertisements about it. I did real horoscopes about it and did research on how to get the horoscopes. And I think not just for Leos and Virgos, but really like the whole zodiac sign. And I went all out. I like drew the cover, drew the advertisements, and I had a blast doing this. And so I handed in my project like a good girl on time, and I ended up getting like 106% on the project. I don't remember how or why I got the extra 6%. It's a bit sketchy when I look back, but it gave me so much confidence. I was like 106%. I got an extra 6 over perfect. Like I would have settled for perfect. And so it really, that moment, it really changed my life, I guess. And I knew that I wanted to do something more editorial. I knew I loved creating stories. I knew that I loved making images and having a say in like, just like content. I mean, now it's a big buzzword with like Instagram and Facebook and YouTube, but like content wasn't a thing back then. So I kind of just knew that I loved creating stuff and I wanted to create stuff. And so to my little 16-year-old brain, I was like, okay, that means I'm gonna be a fashion editor. And so that was my goal. I was like, okay, I'm gonna be a fashion editor. I get to write, I get to like construct images, and I get to put my voice into the zeitgeist and into like the global narrative. And that's kind of just like what I've always wanted, was to be able to like contribute to media and like contribute to the way that we as women see ourselves, or the way we as people see ourselves, the way as Black women we see ourselves. And so that was my goal. And so I went to fashion school, applying to Ryerson University, and they have a fashion program. And in this fashion program, it's like design students and communication students mixed together. So of course I wanted to do fashion communication. I knew that this was the best university in Canada for fashion at the time. I don't know if things have changed, but at the time it was the best university for fashion. And that's, if it's the best, it's where I was gonna go. So I applied, and part of it, because you're mixed for the first year, design and communication, you have to design something for your portfolio. So like I could draw, I could write, I could do all the other things, but the sewing, I had never sewed in my life before. So I ended up getting this pattern from like Bouclair, which is this like tiny little like grandma sewing store in Canada. And I ended up getting these patterns and sewing a dress in one night. And I think, ever the procrastinator, I waited until like the night before the deadline in order to do this thing. So me, that's all I have to say. And so I sewed it, and when I say it looks bad, oh, it looked so bad. But it was a dress, it was one piece, threads were hanging out everywhere, the seams were like buckling, and I had to get my mom to take a picture of this dress for me. Thank God they didn't judge your dresses in real life. And so I stood with like my arm covering the seams and like trying to like pull the back down, and I submitted my portfolio. Needless to say, I got in the end. And I ended up going to fashion school and doing communication. The first year was a struggle, but that's like another story for a different day. And then I ended up graduating and working in graphic design for a bit, for luxury clients, funny enough. And I loved it. I ended up really loving it. But I was working with this guy. I was a junior graphic designer and he was like intermediate senior. And we were the same age, and he was completely self-taught. And I realized that my talents were super limited. Like, as much as I have like an eye for graphic design, I just didn't have the technical ability. And like, I would learn how to do things and then I would forget. And then the next week I would have to learn all over again. Needless to say, it wasn't for me. Then I ended up moving to London, where I did an internship in fashion production, which was great. It was kind of like what you see in the Hills, if you're old enough to remember the Hills. It was like a lot of, you know, organizing photo shoots, location scouting, where they send their interns basically to run around town trying to find locations for the photo shoot. So that was great. I did that for a while. But basically I was so poor. I was so poor. I had just graduated from university, and London is very expensive, and I came with very little money saved. So it was a problem. And needless to say, also, like, I had an ex-boyfriend at the time who was like, come back, which, another story for another day. Never, ever give up on your dreams for a boy. So I moved back to Toronto, and then I ended up working for this blog for a while. That was amazing. That's Stella, by the way. She's my cat, my love, my daughter. You're gonna see lots of her, and she's gonna be your favorite. Anyways, I digress. Yeah, so after London, I moved back to Toronto. I was super sad about it. Like, I love London. It's probably one of my favorite cities in the world. And it might just be because it was like the first city that I lived in abroad. But I love London. Like, the people are amazing. The city is amazing. Whatever you want to do, there's something for you. It's super multicultural. It has like the bustlingness of New York. It's just, I could wax poetic about London, let me tell you. Anyways, so I was home, I was like writing for a blog. I was also like doing a little hustling and like working for side jobs. Like I was a hostess in a stadium for years and years and years, which I mean, I loved. It was such good money and the girls were amazing. During this time, I was like, okay, I know I can't be a graphic designer. I know that like fashion production, I could do it, but it's like non-existent in Toronto. And I really like want to be part of the storytelling more. Like when you do production, you're really kind of just like executants, like do this, do this, do this. Like you are the people that make the vision of the brand or the vision of the agency come to life. So I knew I wanted more, I guess. And so I was kind of like a little leaf in the sky. Do you know what I mean? Like I was just like looking for something to fulfill my purpose, looking for signs, I guess, from the universe. And at the same time, I was thinking about going back to school because I was like, I have this great communications degree, but it's like too creative. Like I want to be more business inclined so that I can be the client of the production company that I was working for. Do you know what I mean? Like I really wanted, I'm egotistical. Let's be real here. Like I want to create the story. I want my ideas to come to life. So I knew that required working for the brand. And so I knew I had to do an MBA, or I knew I had to get more business experience if I wanted to work for a brand. And so I thought about like, where am I gonna get this business experience from? And so I went on LinkedIn and I looked at everybody's jobs that I really loved. Like kid in a candy store, I was like, ooh, I want your job. I want your job. Yes, please. VP of this. And so I was like, okay, you worked here before you worked there, and then you went to this school. And there was a school that I kept seeing, which was a business school in France. And then I looked at their tuition and I was like, I can't afford this, like by any stretch of the imagination. And so I was bummed, and I was continuing to work in the stadium. And one day I walk into my suite, because it was a VIP luxe like suite, and I had somebody that I was working with that day, which I hated. Like basically if you work with somebody and you share your box, you share the tip, and like it wasn't about that life at the moment. Very selfish. The girl that walked in ends up becoming my friend, telling me about her life, and she told me how she worked on yachts. And so I didn't even understand what a yacht was. I was like, so cruise ships. She's like, no, I work on luxury yachts. And I was like, so cruise ships. And she was like, no, let me explain, let's backtrack. Billionaires own these boats, they hire a crew, it's very private. You work with like max like 25, 30 people, and you get to travel the world and save a bunch of money, because basically when you work on a yacht, all of your expenses are paid for, all of your toiletries and things are paid for. All you do is keep the money. Like you don't have to pay for food, you don't have to pay for tampons, you don't have to pay for nothing. I was like, yes, this is what I need. I'm a very decisive person. Like there's money to be made, let's go. And so I packed up all my stuff. Literally within 3 months, I had moved myself down to Florida and found myself taking this course that you need to do to work on a boat.
What she failed to tell you is that part of this safety course included swimming and sea survival, and homegirl cannot swim. Another story, another day.
And yeah, and so I worked in yachting. I worked in yachting for 3.5 years as a stewardess. And initially I was like, yeah, I'm gonna do 1 year, I'm gonna get in, I'm gonna get out. To be honest, I was having fun. Like I got to see so many places. I've been to like 29 countries, and probably 21 of them are because of yachting. It's a great opportunity if you're young, and we'll talk about that on another day, but it's a great opportunity if you're young, either as a means to an end or just as a lifestyle, as a job. So basically after that, I knew I wanted to go do my MBA. That was the plan. That was always the plan. And we're sticking to plan. So I applied to this business school in France, and I got in. I was so proud of myself. I literally The interview process was so hard. The GREs, so tough.
Yeah, so basically I had to study for the GREs while doing 16-hour days on yachts. And I was so paranoid that they were going to fire me if they knew that I was studying to leave the yachting industry, that I used to hide the books in my room like a paranoid little squirrel.
I finally got in. And so then I did my MBA. And during the MBA, I actually won a scholarship with a company that's actually my client now. When I got into the program, I was like, I am gonna do fashion, like fashion. Like I told you, since I was 16, it was like, I'm gonna be in fashion. If I can't be a fashion editor, then I realized in my early 20s, I'm gonna like work for the brands, like fashion. And it was because actually the scholarship that I won was actually with a beauty brand. Part of winning the scholarship was that they had lunch with you a couple times a year. And so I kept having lunch with this one woman from HR who like I adore. She's the best human being ever. And she kept like telling me all the benefits of cosmetics compared to fashion. And so I was sold. Like when you're in fashion, all of the creative choices are really made by the creative director, like Riccardo Tisci, or if you were at Chanel, it would have been Lagerfeld, Rest His Soul. It's like a top-down decision. And so you as a marketing person, you're just like executing their ideas. Your ideas don't actually come to fruition in the same way as when you work in beauty. And so I was sold, I guess. And so I decided to change from fashion to beauty. I did my thesis project in beauty with a bunch of other girls who were also super into beauty. And it ended up being the same company that I had won the scholarship from. And so, yeah, I was on track to change my life working in beauty. And when I graduated from this program in Paris, I was like, I'm never living here again. And at the time I was dating this British guy, so he like got in my ear. He was super like, I don't know if you know, but like Brits and the French and their beef with each other, but he was in my head like, oh, Paris, oh, Paris, oh, Paris. And so I'm gonna move to New York. That is the plan. I'm gonna move to New York or I'm gonna live in Toronto, but I'm not staying in Paris, and I'm gonna work in beauty in one of these two places. Started looking for a job, and it was like a year. It was like a solid year before I found my job. And it was such a bleak year. Let me tell you, like I was not confident that I was ever gonna find a job, and I was so stressed out, and I was waitressing at the same time, and I was like, what has my life come to? I spent all of this time and like money and taking out loans to do an MBA, and I'm never gonna work in beauty. And I started to feel super selfish. I was like, you should have just gotten a regular job. You should have become a lawyer. Like, who are you to think that you can like follow your dreams? Anyways, one day I get a message out of the blue from a girl that I went to school with, and she was like, I'm working for this luxury agency and they're looking for somebody. And the client, funny enough, was the same company that I won the scholarship with, that I did a thesis program with. And so I applied and I got it. And so here I am, voila, it was a company in Paris. That's my story. That's kind of how I ended up here working in luxury beauty. It was kind of a long roundabout way. I hope, I guess, just by telling my story that people can kind of get inspired that they can do it too, that you shouldn't give up. One of my favorite scholars is Angela Duckworth, and she always says, you know, grittiness is kind of not being like, I want to be a fashion editor and I'm going to be a fashion editor. I'm going to hold on to that idea forever and ever. It kind of all goes back to the idea that I knew I wanted to create content. I knew that I wanted to contribute to the zeitgeist, and I had so many like parcours. This is how they say in French, a parcours. I had so many different steps along my journey, and I ended up here, and I think it's like exactly where I'm supposed to end up. And if you actually think about it, I worked in graphic design, and in my job I need to know a lot about like design, the principles, etc. And even though I don't use Photoshop on an everyday basis, I need to know how to be able to tell my graphic designer what I need, etc. I worked for a blog, so I have practiced writing. I worked in production, and a lot of my job I have to manage production. I worked on yachts, and even that might seem so unrelated, but I actually have such a deep understanding of luxury because of that. And I got to see how billionaires live, and I got to see how billionaires spend their money. So I have an understanding that most people who work in my field don't. Now I'm doing this YouTube channel because I think that it could be great to get a different perspective on YouTube, more business, goal-oriented way of looking at beauty. If you've ever thought maybe that you want to work in beauty, let me be your Sherpa. I don't claim to know everything. I am not an expert. I'm still a baby in my career. But if by telling my stories, I can give you any kind of inspiration or like share even like a nugget of knowledge, it would be my pleasure, just to exchange all things beauty from like a different angle, you know? So let's stay in touch. Subscribe, like this video. It helps me a lot with the algorithm as a baby YouTuber. And yeah, let's stay in touch. Bye, loves.